I never imagined my life would turn into a scene straight out of a crime drama, but there I was, standing on my own driveway, watching police officers shove my teenage nephews into the back of a squad car while my sister screamed bloody murder at me from the curb. The night was cold, and the air smelled faintly of gasoline from the squad car's exhaust. Red and blue lights flashed across the neighborhood, bouncing off windows and street signs like a twisted Christmas decoration. I could see silhouettes behind curtains, neighbors whispering, phones recording, probably already sharing the story on our local Facebook group. My sister's face was twisted in rage, her voice cracking as she pointed at me. "You heartless monster! They're just kids," she shrieked, her mascara running down her cheeks. But these weren't just kids. These were the same boys who had stolen from me, vandalized my property, and lied straight to my face with the confidence of seasoned criminals. And here's the thing, I didn't want this. My stomach churned as I hugged my arms to my chest, torn between relief and disbelief. I had begged her for years to discipline them, to teach them right from wrong, but she brushed it off, called it boys being boys, and even laughed when I warned her that one day things would spiral out of control. Now, that one day had arrived. But before you think I'm some cold, bitter aunt who turned on her own family, let me take you back. Because trust me, this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision. This was years of frustration, betrayal, and heartbreak boiling over until I finally reached my breaking point. And if you were in my shoes, you might have done the exact same thing. To really understand how we ended up with flashing lights and handcuffs, you need to know a little about my family. My sister, let's call her Melissa, was always the wild one. Growing up, she was the kind of person who could talk her way out of anything. Late homework, sneaking out at night, even wrecking our parents' car. She'd flash a smile, bat her lashes, and somehow people let her off the hook. Fast forward a couple of decades and nothing had really changed, except now she had 3 kids of her own. From the outside, people thought she was the cool mom. She let her kids eat candy for breakfast, skip chores, and stay up until 2 in the morning playing video games. Neighbors would say, "Oh, Melissa's house must be so fun." But for me, watching it up close was like seeing a slow-motion train wreck. At first, it was little things. Her boys, especially the 2 oldest, would come over to my place and borrow things without asking. My tools, my books, even food from my pantry. I'd mention it to Melissa, and she'd just laugh it off, saying, "Relax, sis, they're kids, it's harmless." But you know what they say, give an inch and they'll take a mile. It didn't stay harmless for long. Soon they were scribbling graffiti on my fence, stomping through my garden like it was their personal playground. And one time I even caught them tossing rocks at my dog. When I confronted Melissa, she rolled her eyes like I was overreacting. "They're just boys being boys," she'd say, sipping her iced coffee like she was too tired to care. And that's when I started to realize something. Melissa wasn't just ignoring the problem. She was enabling it. Every time her kids crossed a line, instead of correcting them, she'd defend them, like the world was out to get her precious angels. And deep down, I had this gnawing feeling in my gut. If she kept this up, it was only a matter of time before things exploded. It didn't take long before the little things turned into full-blown chaos. One summer afternoon, I came home from work and found my back gate hanging off its hinges. My garden, my pride and joy, looked like a battlefield. Tomato plants trampled, flower beds destroyed, and muddy sneaker prints everywhere. And right in the middle of it, a pile of soda cans and chip bags, like my yard had been turned into their personal hangout spot. When I stormed over to Melissa's house, she just laughed and said, "Well, maybe you shouldn't make your garden so tempting." Can you imagine? Like I was the problem for daring to grow vegetables on my own property. But it didn't stop there. A few weeks later, I caught her oldest, Ethan, sneaking into my garage. He'd stolen my husband's power drill and was trying to sell it to one of the neighborhood kids for $20. When I confronted him, he smirked at me, an actual smirk, and said, "It's not like you use it anyway." That was the first time I felt genuine chills. That smug little grin didn't belong on a 14-year-old. It belonged on someone who had learned he could get away with anything. And every time I tried to hold them accountable, Melissa doubled down. If I raised my voice, she'd accuse me of being uptight. If I asked her to replace something they broke, she'd turn it into a family drama, telling our relatives I was picking on her kids. Soon enough, I was the villain in every story she told. I remember one particular night, I was hosting a small dinner for friends. Nothing fancy, just some barbecue in the backyard. Halfway through the evening, we heard a loud pop, pop, pop. Firecrackers. My friends laughed nervously until we realized the firecrackers weren't in the street. They were in my shed. By the time we rushed over, smoke was pouring out. My tools, lawnmower, decorations, everything was ruined. Melissa's reaction? Boys will be boys. It's just stuff. Why are you making such a big deal? That was the moment something in me started to snap. Because it wasn't just stuff. It was my peace, my safety, my sanity. And if Melissa refused to see it, then I knew sooner or later someone else would have to. The real breaking point came on a Sunday afternoon. One of those deceptively quiet days where you think nothing can go wrong. I was inside folding laundry when I heard a loud crash, glass shattering. My heart dropped. I ran into the living room and saw my front window busted wide open. A baseball lay on the carpet surrounded by shards of glass. And outside, Melissa's kids were doubled over laughing like it was the funniest thing in the world. I stormed outside, demanding an explanation. Ethan, the oldest, just shrugged and said, "You can afford to fix it, chill out." His brothers snickered behind him like a pack of hyenas. That's when Melissa herself stepped out of her house, coffee cup in hand, not even looking concerned. Instead of apologizing, she had the audacity to yell at me. "Stop harassing my kids. You're always on their case. Maybe if you weren't such a bitter old nag, they wouldn't mess with you so much." That was it. Something inside me snapped like a rubber band stretched too far. This wasn't just misbehavior anymore. This was harassment, destruction, and flat-out abuse. I told her, in no uncertain terms, that if her boys so much as stepped foot on my property again, I'd be calling the police. Melissa smirked like she didn't believe me. She leaned in close and whispered, "Go ahead. Nobody's going to take your side over mine." But here's the thing. When someone pushes you far enough, you stop caring about who believes you. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my hands still shaking and wrote down every incident I could remember. Dates, times, details. I started building my own little case file because deep down, I knew the day was coming when I'd have to prove just how bad things had gotten. And wouldn't you know it? That day came sooner than anyone expected. After that shattered window, I wasn't the same. I'd spent months swallowing my anger, trying to keep the peace, convincing myself that family harmony was worth the sacrifice. But once glass rained down in my living room, something shifted permanently. My house no longer felt safe, and I wasn't about to let Melissa's circus dictate the rest of my life. The very next morning, I started making calls. First, the local police department. I filed an official complaint and handed over the log I'd been keeping. The officer raised his eyebrows when he saw the stack of notes, photos of my yard, receipts for damaged property. For the first time, I felt like someone actually listened. They told me it was enough to start a case file. Then I contacted my homeowners association and city council. I laid it all out. The vandalism, the harassment, the late-night firecrackers, even the attempted theft from my garage. And you know what? Turns out I wasn't the only one. 2 other neighbors had their own stories about Melissa's kids. Slashed bike tires, spray paint on fences, missing tools. Suddenly, I wasn't just a nagging sister. I was part of a bigger picture of fed-up neighbors. At first, Melissa brushed it off like always, bragging to our relatives that I was being dramatic. But things started changing. Her boys got a formal warning from the police. She got a letter from the HOA threatening fines if her kids kept trespassing. And the best part? Other neighbors began to stand with me. For the first time in years, I wasn't fighting this battle alone. Of course, Melissa didn't take it lying down. She doubled down, trying to paint me as the villain, calling me jealous, lonely, even crazy. But the thing about standing your ground is, it shows people your backbone. And once you finally stop letting someone walk all over you, others see the truth for themselves. Slowly but surely, the tide started turning. And as much as Melissa wanted to keep control, her grip was slipping, and I could feel it. Melissa thought she was untouchable. For years, she thrived on intimidation, sarcasm, and making everyone else the butt of her little empire. But here's the thing about building an empire on arrogance. It doesn't take much for it all to crumble. The breaking point came when her oldest son, Ethan, got caught shoplifting from the local convenience store. Not just a candy bar either. We're talking electronics, headphones, the whole works. The store owner called the police, and because Ethan was already on record with the previous complaints, it escalated quickly. Melissa had to drag herself down to the station in broad daylight, neighbors whispering as she sped away in her beat-up SUV. Suddenly, the golden image she'd painted of her perfect little family cracked wide open. The HOA didn't just fine her this time. They slapped her with a probationary warning that if her household kept causing trouble, she'd face property restrictions and escalating fees. Add that to the legal fees piling up from Ethan's case, and Melissa wasn't just embarrassed, she was broke. And oh, the irony. This was the same woman who used to laugh at me for living small, who sneered at my modest lifestyle and bragged about how her kids would run the world. Now she was the one avoiding eye contact at the grocery store, her cart half empty, muttering excuses under her breath. But the sweetest part? It wasn't me tearing her down. It was her own behavior finally catching up to her. I didn't have to lift a finger anymore. The system, the neighbors, and even her own kids did all the heavy lifting. I'd catch her glaring at me sometimes across the yard, eyes full of that old venom, but behind it, there was something new. Fear. She finally knew I wasn't the pushover she'd banked on for years. And once someone realizes you're no longer afraid, their power over you evaporates like mist in the sun. Melissa had always believed she'd win by sheer force of will, but in the end, she lost everything she tried to control. Her reputation, her finances, even her standing in the neighborhood. Justice didn't just knock on her door, it kicked it wide open. Months passed, and the neighborhood slowly returned to a sense of normalcy. My yard was intact, my shed locked with a new unbreakable padlock, and the constant fear of unexpected chaos finally eased. I even found myself laughing again in my garden, watching the sun hit the flowers just right, and listening to the birds chirping without worry. Melissa's children, surprisingly, began to show signs of change. The younger two started taking responsibility for their actions, learning lessons the hard way without me needing to intervene constantly. Ethan, the oldest, remained a challenge, but seeing him face the consequences of his choices, finally understanding that actions have repercussions, brought a strange mix of relief and melancholy. Life hadn't been easy, but it had taught him, and indirectly Melissa, a lesson they couldn't ignore. As for me, the journey wasn't just about reclaiming my property or demanding accountability. It was about realizing my own boundaries, understanding that family isn't always unconditional, and that standing firm in the face of wrongdoing doesn't make you heartless, it makes you human. I learned that protecting your space, your peace, and your dignity sometimes means making difficult choices, even when it's uncomfortable. In the end, I didn't just win a legal battle or force Melissa to act responsibly. I regained control of my life, my home, and my sense of justice. And more than anything, I discovered the incredible power of perseverance, documentation, and speaking up, even when everyone else expects you to stay silent. Looking back, the shattered windows, stolen tools, and countless late-night confrontations weren't just trials, they were catalysts. They forced change where complacency once ruled, revealing who truly valued accountability and who hid behind excuses. And as I sip my soda in the now quiet backyard, I can finally smile, knowing that standing up for what's right doesn't just restore order, it restores peace of mind, and sometimes, even hope.